The hallway light flickered in sync with her footsteps. At first, Mara didn't notice. She had lived in the house for 3 years, long enough to memorize its quiet patterns. The soft tick of the kitchen clock at night, the way the refrigerator compressor hummed before it clicked on, the slight warp in the hallway floorboard that always creaked under her heel. The light above the hallway had always flickered sometimes. Old wiring. The landlord had said that with a shrug the first week she moved in. But tonight the flicker felt timed. Step. The bulb dimmed. Step. It brightened again. Mara slowed slightly, her socked feet brushing the hardwood. The hallway stretched ahead of her, longer than it seemed during the day. The walls were painted a pale gray that turned almost blue under the weak ceiling light. Step. Flicker. She stopped. The light steadied. For a moment she simply stood there, one hand resting on the doorframe behind her. The air in the hallway felt cooler than the rest of the house. A faint draft brushed the back of her neck, though none of the windows were open. "It's just the wiring," she muttered quietly. Her voice seemed too loud. She lifted her foot and took another step. The bulb dimmed the instant her weight touched the floor. Not a random stutter, an exact, precise dip in brightness. Her stomach tightened. Another step. The same dimming pulse perfectly matched. Mara frowned up at the fixture. The glass shade trembled slightly with each fluctuation, casting warped shadows along the walls. Her shadow stretched ahead of her, then snapped back as the light steadied. Step. Flicker. Step. Flicker. She walked slower now, testing it. The light followed. Not before. Not after. Exactly as her foot touched the floor. The floorboard near the middle of the hallway creaked under her weight. The familiar complaining sound of old wood. The bulb dimmed at the same moment. A pressure built in her ears, faint but noticeable, like the feeling inside a sealed room when the door shuts too hard. Mara stopped again. The hallway went still. The light held steady. She stood there for nearly 30 seconds, listening. The house breathed in its usual quiet way, pipes cooling inside the walls, distant traffic murmuring somewhere outside the neighborhood. Nothing moved. She exhaled slowly. "Coincidence," she whispered. To prove it, she lifted her foot and brought it down harder than before. The bulb dipped sharply, almost going out. Her chest tightened. She stepped again, lighter this time. The flicker softened to match. The house felt suddenly attentive. Mara glanced back toward the living room. The warm yellow glow from the lamp there pooled at the end of the hall, but the hallway itself seemed darker than it should be. She took another step. Flicker. Another. Flicker. Halfway down the hall she paused again, her pulse loud in her ears. The light stayed steady, but a second later, it flickered anyway. A small pulse. Her breath caught. She hadn't moved. The light dimmed again, then brightened. The timing was wrong now. Not synchronized. Delayed. Like an echo. Mara slowly shifted her weight. The floor didn't creak. But the light flickered again, this time a fraction before her foot touched the ground. She froze mid-step. The bulb steadied. Her raised foot hovered awkwardly above the floor. A chill crept across her shoulders. Carefully, she set her foot down. Nothing happened. For a moment, she almost laughed in relief. Then the light flickered twice in quick succession. After the step, as if catching up, Mara's mouth went dry. The hallway stretched toward the bedroom door, the walls closing in slightly with the shifting shadows. The ceiling light hummed faintly now, a soft electrical buzz she was certain hadn't been there earlier. She took another step. The bulb flickered before her foot landed. Precise anticipatory pulse. Her stomach dropped. Another step. The light flickered again early. It knew. The thought came uninvited. The house knew where she was going. Mara stopped breathing through her nose. The air felt heavier in the hallway now, like the pressure inside an elevator just before it starts moving. She turned slowly and looked behind her. The length of the hallway was empty. The living room light still glowed faintly at the far end. Nothing stood there, but the shadows on the wall seemed stretched thinner than they should be, like something had pulled them. Mara turned back toward the bedroom. 3 steps left. She hesitated. Then she took one. The bulb flickered instantly, before her foot touched the floor. 2 steps early. She swallowed. Another step. The flicker came again, faster this time. Almost eager. The hallway creaked softly around her, though she wasn't sure if the sound came from the floor or the walls. The air pressure shifted again. Her ears popped faintly. She reached the bedroom door and placed her hand on the knob. The light flickered behind her. She hadn't moved yet. Mara turned slowly. The bulb dimmed, brightened, dimmed again. 3 quick pulses. The rhythm felt familiar. Her throat tightened as the pattern repeated. Pulse, pulse, pause, pulse. She stared at the floor beneath her feet. 3 steps. That was how many steps she had left when the light started anticipating her movement. 3. Her skin prickled. The light flickered again. Pulse, pulse, pause, pulse. Not her steps. Her heart. She stood very still, breathing shallowly, and counted silently. 1, 2, 3. The bulb dimmed with the 3rd beat. Her pulse stumbled. The light didn't. Kept going. Pulse, pulse, pause, pulse. The exact rhythm her heart had been beating moments ago. Before it changed, Mara pressed a hand against her chest. Her heartbeat was faster now, uneven, but the light continued its steady, patient pattern. The old one. The one she'd had when she first entered the hallway. As if the house had memorized it. As if it had learned the sound of her moving through it. The bulb flickered again. Pulse, pulse, pause, pulse. Mara backed slowly into the bedroom, the door still open behind her. The hallway light kept beating softly overhead. Not matching her footsteps anymore. Not matching her heart either. Just repeating the rhythm it had already taken. Waiting for her to move again. Her closet smelled like someone else's cologne. I noticed it the moment I reached for my winter coat. The door had been closed for weeks. A small rebellion against the cold air. A way to avoid sorting through the wrinkled sweaters I hadn't worn since November. I had opened it briefly last month to hang a new shirt, but that had been routine, a casual flick of the wrist, the familiar creak of the hinges, a comforting sound. Tonight, though, as I pressed my palm against the smooth, slightly sticky surface of the door, the scent hit me first. Sharp, musky, almost sweet in a way that made the back of my throat tighten. I froze. The apartment was quiet. Not just quiet in the usual sense, the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint traffic outside, but a sort of dense, expectant quiet, the kind that makes the air feel heavier in the chest. I pressed my nose to the doorframe and inhaled again. The smell hadn't been there before. I would have remembered it. My fingers lingered on the handle. It was slightly warmer than I expected. Not hot, just warmer, as though the air inside had absorbed some body heat and held onto it. My pulse quickened. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe the heater had shifted the temperature. Or maybe some spilled perfume in a bag weeks ago had finally seeped through the closet walls. I turned on the overhead light in the bedroom. The yellow glow pooled in the corners, casting familiar shadows. The closet door stood unremarkable, still and silent. I tilted my head. Something felt off. The smell was stronger now, pressing closer as though it had moved toward me. My skin prickled. I opened the door slowly. The hinges groaned softly, a sound that seemed to echo through the apartment. The first thing I noticed was the air. It wasn't just warm. It felt thick, dense, as though the space inside had contracted, waiting. My eyes traced the rows of clothing. Everything seemed normal except subtle differences. My favorite scarf, a knitted gray thing I swore I'd left draped over the hanger nearest the door, was slightly lower than it should be, the edge brushing the floor. A sleeve on a blazer that usually hung straight was bent inwards, almost as if something had been curling its fingers around it. I swallowed. The scent was stronger now, intoxicating, familiar yet impossible. I had never worn anything like it. There was a hint of cedarwood, maybe sandalwood, sharp citrus notes, and a powdery warmth that reminded me of skin. My eyes darted across the shelves. Shoes lined the bottom, bags stacked along the sides, all in their usual order. Nothing else had moved or had it. I stepped closer. The floorboards creaked under my weight. The closet seemed to sigh with me. I reached for the scarf. The fabric was soft, but it carried a faint heat. I pulled it gently. It smelled of the same cologne. My fingers trembled. My mind told me it had to be a mistake. Maybe I had spilled perfume when I tried something on last week. But I would remember. I was sure of it. I always noticed new scents. Always. The hanger beneath the scarf shifted suddenly, nudged forward as if something inside had recoiled from my touch. My breath caught. My pulse thudded against my ribs. I pulled back. Nothing moved now. Just the smell. Just the oppressive warmth. The air pressed against my chest, slow and deliberate. My apartment had always been mine. Always safe. Always predictable. But standing in front of that closet, I felt observed. I wanted to shut the door, slam it closed, run to the living room, turn on every light, call someone. But I didn't, couldn't. My hand hovered over the handle. The scent seemed to curl around my fingers, teasing, coaxing me closer. I took a small step in, enough for my face to be near the hanging clothes. The smell hit me fully, sharp and musky and intimate, as though someone had leaned in and whispered secrets into the fabric. My stomach churned. My skin felt taut, every nerve screaming. A shadow moved. It wasn't solid, not like a person, but a faint distortion in the air, bending light just enough to feel present. I froze. My eyes darted back to the shelves, the shoes, the jackets. Nothing visible, just the shifting heat, the scent, and the faint sensation that something was no longer static. Something had acknowledged me. I backed up slowly, my heels scraping against the hardwood. The door frame pressed against my back. The scent followed me, a living thing curling around my ankles, climbing with me as I moved. I wanted to shut it, slam it, lock it, but when I reached for the handle, my fingers brushed the wood and recoiled. The warmth was gone. The closet smelled normal again, just faintly of detergent and old sweaters. My pulse slowed, though my chest still felt tight, as though I'd been holding my breath for hours. I turned the lock in my mind, rationalized it, told myself I must have been dreaming, that my senses had betrayed me. My apartment was empty. I lived alone. There were no intruders. But when I turned my back to the closet to leave the room, the faintest brush of movement in my peripheral vision made my stomach clench. I didn't look, couldn't. The closet door was slightly ajar. Not open enough for me to see inside. Just not closed. I reached out with a trembling hand and touched the wood. The surface was cold, smooth, utterly lifeless. No warmth, no pulse, no cologne. I took a deep breath, closed it fully, locked it in my mind as I backed into the bedroom. The apartment fell silent again. The refrigerator hummed, the heater clicked. Everything was normal, safe, predictable. I tried to sleep. I tried to pretend it hadn't happened. But even under the blankets, I could feel it. The weight of a space that knew I had entered, the faint residue of a scent that should not exist. And I knew, somewhere, just behind that door, something had noticed me noticing. Waiting, breathing, aware.